Today on Story Sessions, my interview is with Philip J. Kriz. And Philip is a delight. He has a wonderful story wrapped up inside a fictional book called The Roadie Cartel. He gives us a peek inside really where that idea came from, basically drug trafficking in the music industry behind the scenes, coupled with his experience as a roadie for 15 years. There's so much more to it, and there is a story in there for everyone. I hope that you enjoy our conversation, and I am so glad that you're here. And I want to remind you, as I always try to do, that your story matters. So let's welcome Philip.
Well, hello, and welcome to Story Sessions, where your story matters. I'm your host, Laura Lynn Donahue, and each week we gather for meaningful conversations rooted in lived experience. Let's dive in.
Welcome to Story Sessions. My guest today is author and music industry insider, Philip Kriz. Hi, Philip.
How are you
Welcome.
today? Yeah, thanks for having me, Laura Lynn.
Absolutely. There's so much to talk about with regard to who you are and what you've done over your career. But let's give our audience just a foundation with regard to your 15 years as a roadie, tech support. Tell us kind of about that. So we've got some background, and then we can move into the story.
Yeah, definitely. I was a roadie for a local sound company for about 4.5 years, and then I ended up joining one of the world's largest audio companies. And so I specialized on the audio side of the industry. And so when we toured, I did speakers and the microphones and the soundboards, and became a crew chief inside of there and a system engineer. And it was a fun run, but yeah, the term roadie is the easiest way to just put it. I was backstage with the bands.
Yeah. Okay. Gotcha. Because I was trying to decide. Don and I have experience in the music industry from back before, pretty much before the before Napster. And so I can picture, roadies on stage or running the soundboard, or, there's so many different applications. So you were sound for the most part.
Yeah, definitely. And nowadays there's even more, but just a few years ago it was lights, video, sound, pyro, so
Yeah.
I was the
all,
sound guy.
all the fun stuff. So do you want to share just a couple of 2 or 3 tours that you've been on, maybe some that meant a lot to you, or
Yeah. I get asked this question all the time. What
Okay.
was your favorite tour? And
Right.
I think it's impossible to actually answer because they each brought such their own dynamic to it. But I can say that without a doubt, Paul Simon was probably one of my most beloved tours. It had everything. I got to travel to so many new countries. I spent time with some incredible musicians. I got to see and experience new ways of looking at the industry because I was with a crew that was very seasoned. And then, Green Day was another wonderful tour that I got a chance to do, mainly because I do like Green Day. And so every night I got a chance to listen to some of my favorite songs played around the world. And then I don't know, it's a toss up. I really love touring with like Carrie Underwood, and Alicia Keys was amazing. I spent a lot of time with Florida Georgia Line, and those guys, they gave me a huge boost in my career. There were so many. I ended on a really cool note with doing Queen, and Adam Lambert was like the last big one I did.
Okay. Wow.
And the very last show I ever got to do was I mixed sound for Kiss. So
Awesome.
it was pretty, I would say that one was a lucky one. A buddy of mine gave me an opportunity to sit in his chair for a few days to help them out in Europe, and it was a great ending to a great career.
Wow. Wow. So, yeah, that's great. So you grew up, I'm just going to walk us back just even a little bit more, in El Paso. Is that right?
Yeah.
In
Mhm.
Texas?
El Paso, Texas.
Okay. And you're from an immigrant family at some
Mhm.
point. Okay. Czechoslovakian
Mhm.
and more.
I would say that I'm more Spanish than I am anything else, but
Okay.
yeah, I have roots in Mexico, Spain, Czechoslovakia are the 3 that I was told. I've never done one of those DNA tests,
Oh,
but
yeah. Just go with what you're told. That's fine.
I enjoy those 3, so I'm just gonna live with it.
Good, good. Yeah, I agree. Just stick with it.
Mm,
Growing up in El Paso, what was your experience with music? Was there music played in your home, that kind of drew
yeah.
you toward the whole idea of being in
Yeah.
music?
Yeah, I think, in the Spanish Mexican culture, just in general, and a lot of Europe, the influence of music is huge in
Mhm,
general. But I believe that my mom and my dad, they both, they like different styles of music. My dad was more like Genesis and Phil Collins, and my mom was more Led Zeppelin and Ted Nugent, which I think was awesome for me because she'd play Leonard Skinner on my way to school all the time, or we'd listen to Howard Stern in the morning, and yeah, she probably had the biggest influence on me with music and took me to a lot of concerts. But I wouldn't say El Paso is a mecca for music. There just happens to be a lot of rock that comes through there, and people enjoyed it. So yeah, I would say that would be like the biggest influence to me was just listening to music as a kid in the car on the way to
yeah.
school.
So, what was your aha moment for what you
Yeah,
wanted to
definitely.
do?
Yeah, when I'm gonna go and say that I was like 11. I don't know, it was like 1991, 92, right around there. It was U2 and Public Enemy came to town, and my mom took me to go see the show. Not a U2 fan. I just was like, "Yeah, this is cool." I think Octune Baby was like the big hit then.
Mm-hmm.
So good song. But I went there and I didn't remember saying this, but my stepmom later on kind of revamped the story for me and told it to me. But um, I was intrigued by the stage. I just remember being like blown away by how big this stage was and the setup, and it was in an arena, or I mean, in the stadium out there outside, and everything about it just kind of intrigued me. And at the time, I was in orchestra. I was, obviously listening to music, um, but I didn't know that there was like a career path by any stretch of this. So years later, after I graduated Full Sail, which also helped me in my career becoming a roadie, my stepmom reminded me. She was like, "Yeah, I remember you coming home and telling me that you wanted to do what they did, and it wasn't be in the band. You said you wanted to be the guy that was standing on stage with the band." And I was like, "Oh, interesting." And so, however that played out in my mind, I just remember after that show, anytime I saw something that was live concert footage, or anytime I went to a show afterwards, I just was so intrigued by all the backstage stuff was my focus.
Well, there's a lot of mystique around the music industry,
Mhm.
and I grew up in Nashville, Music City, but I didn't really know there was a music business
Mhm.
until I was in college and took a job that was in the music business, management and that side of things.
Yeah.
And so I changed my career path, much to my husband's chagrin. I did not become an attorney. um, but it was fun. I mean, being in the
Mhm.
music industry is fun, but
Yeah.
it's not necessarily all that people might think it is. would you say?
I will say that to me, I think the U2 concert definitely molded me. Watching the tour buses come into town when I worked at a restaurant that was right across the street from where the Sun Bowl was, which is the outdoor stadium, and then they had this Don Haskins Center, which was the basketball arena. I worked at this place called the Rib Hut, and I would sit there and just to see these massive tour buses, and just I couldn't picture how people lived on them, and it was so. I think that was the first start to the backstage like mystique that you're talking about, because there is something very, very like intriguing to watch a guy with long hair dressed in black get off this tour bus smoking a cigarette. It's like
Yeah.
you're like, who is this bad boy? Like, it's very James Dean of my time, the way I could explain it. But yeah, it was so cool. And so I don't know, but there was no glamour. There's not like, it wasn't a Lamborghini, there wasn't shiny jewelry. It just was this very pirate like lifestyle that I saw.
Yeah, that's a good way to describe it.
Mhm.
Pirate-like.
Mhm.
So you were on the road uh, for about 15 years. Not obviously
Mhm.
consecutive 15 years, but your career as a roadie. Well, it felt like 15. Okay.
Mhm.
um, so what brought that to sort of, well, a halt?
Yeah, so I was, like I said, one of the last big tour I did was Queen and Adam Lambert, and that was in January of 2020. And, my wife at that moment in time was like, there's something going on in the world, so just be cautious. You're going to, be close to China. There's this virus. And I was like, okay, yeah, 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 sure, sure. So we started traveling, and sure enough, like it's like starting to follow us, and we were in Japan or South Korea, then Japan, and then we went to New Zealand, and then Australia, and it kind of was just bouncing. And the tour was ending, so we flew home, and I think within 5 days of landing, Nashville had that really bad tornado,
Oh
right?
yeah,
And
yeah.
then I think like 10 days after that, the whole world shut down. And I had a plane ticket that morning to fly to Dallas Fort Worth. I was going to go do a Chris Stapleton show. He was opening the brand new Texas Rangers stadium. It was going to be amazing. I love baseball. I was like, oh, this is clutch.
Yeah.
And I got this phone call and it said, don't go to the airport. And so I didn't. And that was the end. That was what I thought was the end of my career. Because
Mhm.
the foreseeable future just didn't look like anything was ever going to come with touring again or the music. And it was just, there were so many what ifs. And so I just kind of parted ways shortly, probably a year after that.
Yeah. Well, it's um, interesting, really, what the pandemic did to so many of us who were in established careers,
For sure.
um, and especially anything that involved a live appearance.
Oh, yeah,
That
totally.
was gone, and several of my guests have had pivotal moments in their lives during the pandemic because of the stillness and wanting something to do with all
Definitely.
the time that you have on your hands.
Oh, yeah, for
So,
sure.
is that during that time, was there something that you reflected back on in your career before the pandemic that prompted you to want to write a story about it?
I get asked that all the time, like, "Oh, this is about your touring career." I'm like, "Oh, no. That would literally be the most boring book in the world. It'd be me walking into a bar, me falling asleep in a hotel room and eating pizza at some point in there, and then waking up and going to work." Um, but when I was on the road, I had tried writing a comedy. I always My grandma was a writer, and I loved that she wrote. I don't know, she was just creative. She painted, she wrote, she did all this artsy stuff, and she was definitely one of my biggest fans, and I just loved her to death. And so when I found out she wrote a book, I don't know if I was really excited at that moment, but I just thought it was so cool that she had done it. She had spent the money and published it. She was not published by any big amount of anything like that. It was literally her publishing on her own, putting it in like I think a religious store. It was a story about Jesus. So,
Hmm. Yeah.
and it was really cool. I was like, this is so cool that you did that. And I think it just back of mind kind of stuck there. And so years later, I was like, I think I know how I want to get out of my touring career. I'm gonna write a story. It's gonna be easy.
Gotcha.
I'm just gonna sit
Oh.
down. I'm gonna write
Mhm.
this comedy, and it's gonna be the. And so sometimes I would work on it in my hotel rooms, and it never worked. As you know, writing you really have to dedicate time, and I just never, between the bars and eating pizza and falling asleep and then going to work, I just never. It never panned out. And so yeah, so when the pandemic hit, I had nothing but time. In the back of my mind, I was like, I could take another stab at writing a book, uh, but I don't think it was the one that I had started on the road. And mm, I, I think the catalyst was I was on a walk and I heard this guy Jack Carr telling Joe Rogan on his podcast that he's like, yeah, I just sat down and started writing one day, and I was like, how do you sit down and just start writing? I was like, I've been trying this for years now, and I can barely get, half a page written. So to me, it was that. I think that was like the first like true moment of my writing career that hit me.
By tuning into this podcast, you understand one thing. Everyone has a story to tell, and that includes you. But sometimes we need a little help to bring our story into the world. That's where Story Sessions comes in. We're a collective of published authors, editors, and experienced storytellers who know that great stories aren't manufactured, they're revealed. Through thoughtful listening, guided conversations, and respect for your voice, we help uncover the story that is already inside you. Story Sessions. Your story told the way it was meant to be. Find out more at storysessions.live.
The story that you wrote is it's so creative. It's called the book's called The Roadie Cartel,
Uh-huh.
and basically you develop characters around uh, the the roadie life, the music industry life, and uh, tell the audience just a little bit more about the premise of the book. Wyatt and her character, and
Yeah. Well, I really it started out as me telling a tale of like a drug. What if the music industry was run by a cartel? But in there, I knew that I couldn't just write about drugs and guns. Like it would be like any other story. And how would I get them into the music business? So I really kind of went backwards in time. I went all the way back to like, how does someone get into crime, or like how does someone even like start to believe that they could even live a life in a crime filled environment like that? And so to me, developing it, the story was the best part and the most fun because yeah, the book really does revolve around this family who was once good and grew up with great morals and great all the things that I think happen to people who end up in crime sometimes is wrong place, wrong time, or just like a taste for adventure that kind of takes you down a different path than you might have thought you wanted to go. And so the book showcases this family from them growing up in Czechoslovakia. They migrate over to the States in the 70s. And I thought that that was the best place to put music. Like it was kind of when Woodstock was involved.
yeah.
It was like that was like the first big festival that had ever happened. And then after that, you had all these bands that started to tour, and their music really was like really taking a different shape than I think it ever had before. And So I thought that was a pivotal point where I could insert this family into this scene, but I had to like break it apart. And so I used two different characters to really drive the story back and forth between good and evil. One really wanting to just kind of enjoy his life and have fun, and the other one kind of using his brother to get what he wanted out of life. And so then the story goes on, and then insert Wyatt, who is my main character, and she, as most I think people in a crime family, kind of fall into the footsteps of her father. And so through there, yeah, and then I just tell this story from there up until modern time of her avenging her father's death inside of this story. So it was fun. It was I I sometimes amaze myself with things that I come up with. I have a big imagination. I was just very happy that I was able to put it onto paper because,
Yeah.
as you know, the translating of what you think is great and what you think is going to be like, oh, this is gonna people are gonna understand this seamlessly. It's like it's a it was a challenge. So
Yeah. Yeah. It isn't just sitting down and writing. You're right. I mean, yes, you do have to sit down and write.
yeah, yeah,
But, it's not the one-hit wonder type writing. It comes to
no,
you in, 30
no.
seconds and you're getting it down in a half hour or whatever.
No,
Um,
and I went through so many different, oh my gosh, the amount of editing, and I grew up not wanting to ever go to school. So to
mm,
me, language and spelling, and it was a challenge. This was the most challenging thing I've, next to being a parent.
yeah.
This is definitely one of the most challenge. Okay, okay, parent, husband, because like
Get
just
your priorities straight.
yeah. Yeah, like
Yeah.
a good husband, a good parent, like those are definitely hard. But then, like writing is here's my train of thought, and it ended up coming out good. I had a good editor too.
Yeah. Oh boy, an editor is a big deal. You just, I mean, I didn't know until I wrote a book the importance. I mean, maybe it seems logical, but it's amazing what an editor can do to make your story go from good to great.
Yeah. What was really cool is like I grew up with my editor. So my wife helped me in my first like, let's just say 7 edits. But then her life ended up getting, like the music industry started to come back. So she went back to work. And so, but I ended up asking a friend of mine that grew up in El Paso with me. And so she had all of these stories. She goes, I can picture this. It just needs refinement now. Or like I had someone who wasn't just going, this isn't real, or this isn't possible. Like cartels don't do this, or there's no way. So I had someone who'd also seen firsthand experience, and so it's really cool to have her refine the story into this way where it was readable, or, and readable and enjoyable.
And legible and all that.
Yeah, and all the other things.
So what drew you to your main character Wyatt? And I know that her relationship with her father in the story is really important. It's central to the story.
I'll say that I think Wyatt's character started as me, an angsty, angry teen who went on her own. But it was actually a guy character first. I think in an edit close to being done, I decided to make it a female, so it took any kind of like, oh, this is a story about you,
Mm.
which there were characteristics about me, but it definitely, I tried to be like, how can I make this not about me? Like remove me from the equation almost completely. And so, yeah, I turned her into a female, which then actually added a whole other part to me because I had to kind of put myself in what a female would feel like in certain situations, or and in the music industry it is predominantly male, and so how can I make her a strong character, or how can if my daughter was to read this down the road, or if someone else's daughter was to read this, like, how can I make her into a character that is strong? I think that was like the main focus of the entire finishing of the book until it hit print was, all right, if I'm going to write a character, I want this to be someone who I think would be a great role model. Maybe not at first,
Mhm.
but
Mhm.
towards the end.
Yeah, well, she wrestles with a pretty big moral dilemma.
Yeah. And I think that is, I think crime is so interesting to me. Like,
Mm.
there's something so intriguing because everybody's trying to scoot by somehow, some way, whether it be getting a little extra out of your taxes or whether you're just full on running drugs up the coast. Uh, So to be in that world, which I have spent some time, but nothing like crazy, but enough to be like, okay, what if it was, what if I was to have gone all the way? How would that look? And so, yeah, for
Yeah.
her character to, yeah, wrestle with this idea of money and power and for all that, and then want to do something different was a fun, to me, was a fun ride,
Yeah.
imagination wise.
Yeah. And maybe you talked yourself out of being in the cartel.
I definitely, in my time, I hit a fork in the road at some point in the early 2000s, and I I'm glad. But I do that.
Yeah. Well, it's right. I mean, what you said, we all run some kind of numbers through our head, and what might be a quicker path
Uh-huh.
from A to Z. I could skip the middle letters.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
um, so I think it's a really interesting premise
Mhm.
for the
Thank
book,
you.
and for it's realistic in a sense. I mean, we're not all going to be thinking about the cartel or drugs,
Mhm.
or but we all find ourselves in moral dilemmas,
Totally.
and
Totally. And I want, like, with the easiest thing to do is insert music and the cartel,
Mm,
only because they're two things I think that are so intriguing to people.
yeah,
I think, like, people, there's so much like behind the scenes that people are like, oh, I wonder what it really is like. And so the what ifs are easy. It's really like now questioning, like, is that true? Because
mm,
there is, like, there's this giant world where we just don't know. And especially if, like, being in the music industry, there's things that you sign these NDAs and you're like, why am I signing this? And then you have companies like, as you probably have heard in the news, Ticketmaster and Live Nation,
yep,
and I didn't write this about any of them, but you can insert any giant company, and
mm,
there's just things that they do sometimes that you make you go, what if? Why is there this fee? Why is there this? And so, yeah, the added story in there is the music industry being a kind of a blanket of hmm, could it possibly be?
yeah, yeah. Well, there's a lot of intrigue. There's so much equipment. There are so many cases, cartage, rolling thing, rolling bin, just all of the opportunity to move product, whatever product it is.
Exactly.
It's there.
I mean, that is definitely one of the oldest tricks in the book to get an artist from point A to point B. You put them inside of a road case, and Miss Taylor Swift. That's how she got out to her stage. They put her
Yeah.
in a set cart.
And that's so, if you don't know that, that's so interesting. But
Mhm,
I was just thinking about all of the different ways that you could, well, like we said, move product,
mhm, mhm.
any kind of product.
Yeah, yeah. The music industry definitely is shielded by a lot of smoke and mirrors, which is cool. Again, magic. It's the sleight of hand, and it's all the things that I think as humans we're just curious. Curious.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and music is such is really a bridge builder. I had a guest who uses music to bring people together to have, conversation and community. And I think anytime you have something that powerful, you're going to have a raised interest level. And there is, if you don't know, you don't know. And to get to hear stories, it's fun because it seems unrealistic.
Yeah, I think that's the best part, is that it seems unrealistic. And again, being out there for so many years and meeting so many different roadies of so many different decades, to say that one story or one specific thing ever had an impact would be crazy. I think it was just a blend of everything I'd ever seen and done. I was able to just kind of have fun with it, and at the same time, I was out of the industry, and so there was nothing. I wasn't terrified to potentially say something that was going to be off-putting or make me not have a career. It was kind of like, well, let me just go down this road and write what I think would be the most interesting tale to tell about my life that isn't my life.
Do you think anywhere in your book you were writing to yourself or to someone specifically?
Oh, I can think of many times in my book that there's um, hope that I wrote, like things that potentially I would say the ending or the first chapter probably were the most important to me, just because like all things that you go through in life, they're the struggles and the ups and downs, and then you come out of it on the other side and you're like, wow, I didn't realize that it was going to be. I knew it was gonna be hard, but I didn't realize it was gonna be that hard. And so I think a lot of it was me writing to, yeah, potentially a former version of myself, and then maybe a future version of myself as well. Letting myself know, like, yeah, just keep going.
What is significant about not being on the road and getting to tell your story in such a tell a story in such a creative way? How has that impacted you in your, maybe your happiness, your joy? Is there something positive or a struggle that you could share with us that came
Well,
from that?
I can honestly say I never thought I was gonna get off the road.
Hmm.
I would tell my wife all the time, like, I'd probably just end up dying in one of these buses at the ripe age of whatever. And so hope was, I wouldn't say that it was low, because I had a great job. I was having fun. We were traveling. Like there was no, looking back at it, I can't say that it was bad or that any moment was bad. But where I'm at now, I felt like my story allowed me to get just a story out.
Hmm.
I didn't have to necessarily, because everybody, like I said earlier, everybody asks, what's it like?
Hmm.
Who's your favorite band? Tell
Hmm.
me about this. Where did you go? And as nice as that was, I think the attention was beautiful. I think I took it probably a little too far and enjoyed it a little too much. So getting out of getting off the road and sitting behind something that was hard, like a computer screen, and sitting there typing, and then kind of knowing that, well, I had hope that the book was going to be a smash hit, number one bestseller,
Yeah,
right? I think every
why not?
author dreams of that, right?
Yeah.
But deep down, I think I knew, I had read something somewhere, and so deep down, I knew that it was going to be a 10-year or like 10,000-hour process. No matter how I sliced it, this was not going to be an overnight success.
Mm.
And so it was really nice to have something that was just me. Like, it wasn't about the accolades. It wasn't about, it's really nice when someone's like, "Hey, I really liked your story." I'm like, "Oh, thanks." And I think having someone enjoy my story and not my story with a band is probably the biggest relief of my life in all reality, because I don't have to sit here and I don't have to be Roadie Philip anymore. I don't have to be Philip who tours with this band and comes to this city, and there's none of that anymore. I just get to kind of be myself. I get to be a dad and a husband. I'm back in the industry now. I work at a really cool rehearsal studio. I'm working for my old company, just in a different facet now. And so for me personally, I think the fort came again in my life, and I was able to leave my Roadie Cartel life for something else. And so I think, yeah, like I didn't see it going that way. I didn't realize that it was going to have the positive effect that it's had on me being a writer. And so yeah, at the end of the day, I think I can look back and look at writing as the catalyst to me having a more normal life in a way,
Yeah.
a more just grounded experience. And I think, yeah, some of it was just getting things off my chest that may or may not have ever happened.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Well,
I think that's the beauty
yeah,
behind it.
I really completely agree with you on that. That's pretty unique.
Mm.
And I I have experienced that to a certain extent,
That's
and
awesome.
just thinking, "Oh, I don't really know her."
Hmm.
This is, a new me that was there
Uh-huh.
all along. Um, and I love that that is the experience that you've had. Because everybody's got a story, and
Totally.
we all want to be validated in our story. We want people to listen to our story. Um, and then it's important, it's meaningful, and
Mhm.
just the value of story and the value of being recognized for your story.
Writing, it is a beautiful thing. And looking at it I don't know if there's a way that I can ever tell people to go read or to go write, but all I can ever do is like express the impact it had on me, and hopefully through my joy, like people can be like, oh, and I have, and I think a few people have taken that and they're like, wow, like it really is enjoyable. And so yeah, like the new and improved me will always promote reading and writing way more.
Well, you and I met in person for the first time in the fall, right? At the Nashville
Yeah.
Festival of Books.
Mhm.
I remember your joy. You have a
Oh,
lot of
thank you.
joy. And I was also jealous of your guitar picks that you were handing out. I was like, man, that was such a great idea. So, I did my own little thing when
I
we were in Tucson.
Mhm.
So,
Uh,
um,
I like the seed, the flower, the seed.
oh,
It's
thank
a
you.
it's a good touch.
Thank you.
Yeah, when I got home, I think that that's the coolest part about writing or being creative, is that it's endless. It's really up to you, or I mean, or me personally, going, well, if I was someone getting this or receiving this, how would I enjoy this more? And so, yeah, like, it was fun because when I got home, I opened up my zipper to my bag,
Uh,
and sure, there's bookmarks and there's all the other stuff you get, but then there your Laura Lynn, your card was, and it was,
oh.
and it was a more enjoyable uh, viewing experience than just, yeah, your typical business card. Or
Well, that's all credit to you, Philip, because you gave me the idea,
Oh,
and
cool. Well, that's what
guitar
we should
picks
do.
just didn't work for me.
Yeah. They are a very niche experience,
Yeah.
memento, I should say. But so that's the thing, though, is I think as artists and as I'm not in competition with you. I'm an enjoyer of what you do, and so I think that that was another thing. Leaving the road, that was such a beautiful thing to release. Was
Mhm.
I was done being in competition with anybody else. It was all on me. Like everything fell to me, and I was the only person that could make my day either good or bad. And so I had to choose good more than the other.
Yeah. Yeah. Because the other's going to come.
100%. To say
Yeah.
that I don't have the other would be I had it earlier today and I had to snap out of it. And,
Yeah.
but again, it's me. It's not like, oh, I missed this tour or this person on this tour or this person keeps driving me crazy. It's just me. It's just all me. And so, yeah, so I think promoting and giving ideas of what, like, again, part of my book was like, sure, there will always be intrigue behind the music business.
Yeah.
But it's just a black curtain. There's nothing, I mean, sure, there's crazy stuff happening, but to say that it's really happening or this is really happening, well, it's just a show. Let's call it what it is. And so, yeah, giving away like ideas, I think it's magical, and I love that you took an idea.
Well, thank you. Gosh, I really appreciate your time. We've just, I mean, I think that we could just like keep talking about so many different areas that our lives have probably intersected in one way or another, whether actual intersections or just experiential intersections of life.
Every story moves through stages, and Story Sessions is built to meet you at each one. Start with a focused discovery session to uncover your story's arc, and then move into a guided series that sharpens your voice, your positioning, and your path forward. And when you're ready, step into launch with expert coaching to help your story land with clarity and impact. And sometimes, when a story truly stands out, we don't just help guide it, we publish it. Find out where your story starts at storysessions.live.
Well, so talking about story and writing stories, whether it's your fictional autobiography, your fictional memoir, your true memoir, and thinking about the fact, well, that we've talked about everyone has a story. Not everybody wants to be a writer. Not everybody wants to write their story down or feels confident in doing that. I remember at the Tucson Festival of Books, I would talk to people who are like, oh, I have a story, but I'm not a writer, or I could never tell my story. I encouraged people to tell their story to at least one person, for that connection. How would you encourage someone to write their story?
Well, I'll say this. One of the coolest things about going to these book festivals with you and Julie is the amount of different genres. It is incredible to me. And one thing that really is so cool is that the people that you would assume would love one genre could love something completely different. So any time that like I talk about like writing or enjoying just like telling stories or just like someone's being like, wow, you're just so good at telling stories. Well, yeah, but I've also been in that position my whole life, sitting on buses, telling stories, trying to outdo the next person. But I do believe that every person has something in them, just whether it be a short story, whether it be a long story, whether it be a moment in their time or a blip in their life, whatever, however you like to look at that. One cool thing that I think any person can do is if they're not sure of maybe their story being too personal or I don't want to put names involved or this or that. There's fiction. Fiction is one of the greatest things you could. There is no limit to fiction. That's why people fall off buildings and live and run around, and that's why there's Batman. And fiction doesn't have rules. And I don't think like storytelling has to have any boundaries to it when it comes to stuff like that. Like, sure, like a memoir might have to be a little more truthful, or you might have to look at it in a certain way. But if there is something I think that any person wants to get out and they're maybe terrified of the consequence, or they're maybe scared of who hears it, or maybe they're just masking, for safety reasons, whatever that might be.
Yeah.
I think one of the coolest things is fiction. Just because you take away this ability for someone to say, "Ah, that never happened." You're like, "Of course, because it's fiction." Duh.
Right. Right.
But I think that there gives you the outlet. I think there you can have, a roadie cartel in space. You can have uh anything you want. You could have anything that you dream of, and being at these book festivals, you see it. You see these incredible stories that people create, and they're magical, and they are. Like there's fantasy, there's horror, and every day there's people who go through something that's difficult. And I think if you were to ever go through something difficult, or create something that you never thought that you could create, and maybe you just don't want to say it with your name, go to fiction. Create something that someone can take and ingest, and you can still tell the story, and you can still have protagonist and antagonist. You can still have all the characters. You can create worlds, and I mean that's what makes like the Narnia series so cool.
Yeah. Boy, that's a good series.
The whole book, I like I said, I didn't read a lot, but one thing I did while writing, especially in the editing process or towards the end of it, is I really started to pick up other books because I already had my story. I didn't really need to steal anything. I didn't need to try to mold anything. And
Right.
so, but I picked up the Narnia. I had always loved the movie, and I was like, and then I found C.S. Lewis, and I was like, man, he's such a good writer. He takes stuff and he puts it in this fictional world that has all the things. It has everything, good, bad. And so I think that to me would be any advice I could give someone. Go fiction.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, even in uh, memoir or dramatizations of real life stories, there's often times you mentioned earlier, changing some names or changing
Mm,
the story a little bit. Um, so it maybe takes some of the edge off if you're not feeling like, well, I
totally.
don't want to tell that specifically, but I'd like to tell that emotion.
Oh, yeah,
um,
yeah, for
you
sure.
know, um, and one thing that with this podcast that we're doing is to encourage people to tell stories. And
Totally.
that provides connection like music does,
Sure.
um, and gives you something to talk about, relate to, and just encouraging those who are wondering if they should
Mhm.
tell their story. There are opportunities. There are opportunities to tell stories, and we have this companion platform also called Story Sessions, and that's where you can tell your story to someone, and you can have it written down. You can have it transcribed. There's a lot of different ways to do it, but it takes some of the edge off, so to
Yeah.
speak.
I think a lot of people feel pressure that they have to tell this magical story that's going to get to millions of people as well. And I think that that's a myth that we can get rid of. I think telling a story is sometimes just important to one person. You don't have to be the next biggest author. You can tell it and change multiple people. You can change one person's life. And so I think there is this weight that people feel too, like, well, if I start writing, then I have to go, and you're like, no, you go the path that makes the best sense, but tell your story, get it out there. It is
Yeah,
important.
yeah. I 100% agree with you. It is important. Well, Philip, this has really been great to have you. And
Thank you. Thanks for having me
I,
on.
yeah, I wanted to ask, now, do you have a follow-up book yet?
So I am writing it, but
Okay.
because I now have a million other things going on. Back to my original statement of time, and
Yeah.
it is not an easy task to write
Yeah.
a follow-up book. with a job and children and trying to also be a husband. So it's there. I wrote and threw away about 20,000 words not too long ago, maybe last year.
Yeah.
You know,
Okay.
being a
Fair.
I think sometimes again we put pressure on ourselves that we're like, oh my gosh, I gotta create this entire story again, and but I did paused and I did some character developing this
Oh,
time versus just train of thought writing.
so yeah, that the pressure, when's the next one coming? Well, there is also life. Life,
Yeah,
happens, and there
life,
is, yeah,
that darn thing.
that darn thing. Tell our audience where they can follow you.
Yeah, Philip J. Kriz. I love Instagram. I've come to the
Mhm.
conclusion. I tried it all.
Uh-huh.
I had a podcast, I had YouTube and all these channels, and I came to realize that I really just love Instagram. I love Instagram, and so you probably find me there the most. And I think it's because that was one of Facebook and Instagram were the first two platforms I ever found. And so just look me up, Philip J. Kriz, and follow me, and I'll chat back or follow you back or any of the combination.
Well, that's great. That's great, Philip. Thank you again for being here. And
Absolutely.
just want to remind everyone out there that your story matters. And thanks again.
Thanks for having me, Laura
You're
Lynn.
so welcome.
Thanks so much for listening to Story Sessions, where your story matters. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a 5-star review, subscribe to our channel, and share it with someone you know. To learn more about the Story Sessions family, visit storysessions.live. That's storysessions.live. Thanks so much and see you next week.